My name is Blair Adall. I'm a dentist in Liverpool, Nova Scotia. I brought in a British military jacket, which was from my great-grandfather, who served in the British military and with the Canadian military in the First World War. I believe it's his uniform from early in his career, red coat, and a whistle that I think may have been part of his battle dress uniform when he actually was fighting with the Canadians in the First World War.
The iconic British redcoat made its first official appearance on the battlefield during the 17th century. Many myths exist about why such bold colour was used, but the official reason lies with the English Civil War's New Model Army. Formed by parliamentarians in 1645, the choice was born out of a desire to standardise uniforms, and red dye was affordable and accessible. The decision would help inspire the institution of the Red Serge, worn by the RCMP. The traditional tunic has represented Canada's historical allegiance to Britain since 1873. The British traded in their scarlet jackets for muted khaki in 1848, when blending in became the difference between life and death. Today, they reserve their red uniforms for ceremonial occasions such as formal parades, where pride, not combat, is the focus.
Blair, welcome to Militaria, and you've brought a very interesting artifact for us today to have a look at. How did you acquire this?
It was in the possession of my grandfather. He'd had it from what I assumed since his father had passed away. He was killed in the First World War, and it sat in a closet for decades, as far as I know.
I personally love military uniforms, and I'm always interested in the fact that uniforms can really tell us what period we're dealing with by the cut of the uniform, the design, the materials used. And so it's almost like a little bit of detective work by looking at some of these uniforms. What we do have here, it's a pre-1914 scarlet uniform. If we look carefully at the cuffs, we can date this to the post-1907 period. If you look here at the chevrons, you have 4 here. This designates a rank of either regimental sergeant major or a quartermaster sergeant. It's I believe, a 7-button uniform. This is indeed a dress uniform. On the collars, we have some musketry insignia. And on the shoulder here, we have S.of.M., which is School of Musketry. So this is a post-1907 but pre-1914 uniform, so we can sort of place it in there. And it's in excellent condition. The quality is officer quality. It was probably a private purchase. He would have received a stipend to get it done up. I see you've brought in a whistle as well. The whistle actually doesn't go with this uniform. This probably would have been with his battle dress uniform. And what's significant about this is a lot of times going over the top. This is what NCOs or officers would use to get the troops to go over the top. It's not military marked. It looks to be a private purchase specimen, but that was not uncommon. So Blair, this uniform belonged to your great-grandfather, Thomas Radall?
Yes.
He started off with the British military and then ended up in the Canadian military. What can you tell us about his military career?
My understanding is that the British could see that there was going to be a war starting in Europe, and they sent soldiers to Canada to train Canadian troops to get ready for the First World War. And being a marksman, he was sent to Canada to train soldiers as fighters for the war effort from Canada, both as machine gun and, my understanding, as sharpshooters was his specialty. So that's how he ended up in Canada.
He enlisted in with the Canadian Expeditionary Force, but he was seconded to the Canadian military.
Yes, he was, from the British.
Okay. He would have been seconded to the Canadian military because at that time, the British were quite aware of what was coming. They had an idea that there could be possibly a conflict. They sent over qualified troops to train Canadian forces, as they did to Commonwealth countries, and he would have been there to basically get everyone up to snuff so that when the time came, we would be able to have the troops properly trained. Blair, you had also mentioned that he started very young in his military career.
Yes, he was 15 when he began with the British military as a drummer and continued his career, obviously, through to become a career soldier. I believe he ended up spending time in both Hong Kong and Japan as a young soldier, and that he moved up the ranks as well as he did so when he finally became a Canadian soldier or fought with the Canadians.
And what can you tell us about his experience with the Canadian Expeditionary Force in the First World War?
He ended up fighting with the Canadians at Vimy Ridge as well, and was wounded. I'm not sure he was wounded at Vimy Ridge, but he was certainly wounded at least twice. And because he was a career military man, decided that if there was a war going on, he was going to be in it, and therefore returned to the front each time after he had his wounds healed, and ended up being killed in August of 1918, just before the end of the war. He made it through till almost the end. He was killed in August of 1918, so all but 2 months of the war he was involved in. So I have a special bit of respect for the fact that being a career military man, and the fact that, you know, fighting in the First World War and returning to battle after being wounded. I have the ultimate respect that he gave the ultimate sacrifice for.
So Blair, thank you for bringing this artifact in. I do love it. It's a great uniform. What are your plans for this uniform?
That's a good question. I have inquired with other family members as to what we think we should do with it. Possibly see if the Museum for the School of Musketry in Hythe would be interested in it, or possibly the museum at home in Liverpool. The Queens County Museum might be interested in having it, even though he was never a resident there. This might fit in with part of their collections as well.
Yeah, either way, I think that would be great. If someone was interested in the family, that would be great as well. I would encourage you to write all the information down that you have about this individual, just so it is saved and it keeps its historical context.
My time with Andrew was very informative. I learned quite a few things about the jacket that I didn't know, and the whistle as well. There was a few details that I found quite interesting, and yeah, it was very informative.